2004 Ohio Valley Conference Coach of the Year and former Razorback head coach, Jack Crowe.
You know, Nick's had a big influence on coaching. If he couldn't cuss he had to use some body language. You want to know what this means? I can interpret it for you. This is right at the time that coaches start getting a little puckered, as I say, everywhere, even when you got all those players Nick's got. But right here is when all the practice has to give way to performance, right? Don't tell me about practice, coach. How we're going to play. So we're going to practice one thing right here. You ready? 1. Y'all going with me? 2, 3. Pass! There you go. That's the first one, right? You guys that didn't enter it right, I'll see you after practice. I guess this tour, which is a one-stop tour here, is to answer the trivia question, what happened after the Citadel game to Jack Crowe? And really, who wants to know? But let me tell you what happened. One thing that all coaches that become the mercenaries of the trade, and that's a way that you can talk about college coaches. Jason, the first thing you asked me, did I get my sons, who both went to school and played football here, high school and junior high football, did I get them back to where I could see my grandchildren at will? And I did. Check the box. I got my grandkids where I can see them anytime I want to. So you can check the box that one thing that happened, the most important thing that happened, is I got access to my grandkids, and my sons still talk to me. Next box. I won 100 games as a college football coach. That was one probably not many people that ever did check. And I have the biggest, next, and I have a legacy. And it's not coaching at Arkansas. It is the Coach Safely Foundation. So I guess you could say I survived, moved forward. Those are the things that I remember that I carry on. But here's some stories for you, because I've asked everybody that I've been around, tell me what to do. They say, oh, I just tell stories, coach. Well, don't turn me on. I'm pretty hard to turn off. The first one would be, how do you become the head coach at Arkansas with seemingly not really any connection to get there? And what happened was, Coach Hatfield, who I respect more probably than any coach I've ever worked with, Kim decided he was going to get on the airplane and fly to Clemson, which I had just left. I'd been here. I heard how good the quarterback was here, Quinn Grovey, and I decided I needed to be where there was some talent. So I came over here. Quinn made me look like I could coach. By the way, Quinn reminded me of this last night. We're getting ready to play Houston in Little Rock in 1989. Andre Ware is the hottest thing in football. He's going to win the Heisman Trophy. And I stood up for the offense before the game and told our players, Lindy, the team with the best quarterback was going to win the game. Remember that, Lindy? And they knew that I thought that our quarterback was better than him. And what happened? Our quarterback was better than him. I told Quinn this too. In my sports medicine life afterwards, Andre Ware came to see Dr. Andrews about his shoulder when he was playing in the NFL. Classy guy, you see him on television. Oh yeah, coach, I remember you. In small talk, all of a sudden I brought up Quinn's name. He got a stiff back and quit talking. So I'll tell you what, now I'll just use that scenario to tell you how special really Arkansas is and has been and will be. But as Bo and I have jockeyed back and forth in discussions in front of the world, I always talk to Bo, I think I'm talking to one person. Little did I know that, you know, all this stuff's getting out there somewhere. I used to have somebody to punch me and tell me, "You're on the radio, coach," but I don't have that person anymore. So, you know, I said this program had accepted mediocrity a few years ago with Bo, and in my opinion, it had. And whenever you forget who you are, you can allow mediocrity to creep in. I can tell you, when I met with Frank Broyles after we lost the Citadel game, there was no mediocrity in the room. And two redheaded guys that were emotional. It was an explosion because neither one of us could accept mediocrity. And I've never been in a school I don't have a ring from, including I've got the last ring, Quinn. We got the last ring to set a conference championship. Actually, Quinn's got the last two. I got here time to get one with him. But I'll go back to getting off that airplane. I'm gonna weave a lot of stuff here, and I got no script, so look out. So I get off that airplane, and there's nobody told me, but I get off of it. Actually, Terry Don Phillips walks out there, and Ken wants me to go back with him, and it's just me and Ken getting on that plane flying to Clemson. And I don't have a good feeling about the whole thing, to be honest with you. Terry Don walks out there. Y'all remember Terry Don Phillips? Terry Don walks out there, and he walks up to Ken, says something to Ken, and Ken looks at me and he says, "Jack, you probably need to stay here, but if you don't get exactly what you want, this plane will turn right around and come right back and get you." Now, Ken Hatfield stands for the word class. And so I get in the car with Terry Don, and he takes me straight to meet with Dan Ferreter, who is the president. Is that name even Kerry? Who lives like 2 blocks down from me, who I've met in the yard. Unbelievably great guy, just salt of the earth, great person, which is how I would characterize my whole time I spent in Arkansas. Classy from beginning to afterwards. And I went in to see him, and he says, "You know, they made me the president here, and I didn't even really want to be the president." Boy, was that a good opening line. He says, "You know, I'm a sociology professor, and I took on a lot of administrative things, and one day they said, well, we want you to be president." He said, "I'm really sort of anxious to get back just being a sociology professor." He said, "And you've been picked to be the head coach." First word I heard of it was right there. Did I apply for the job? No. Anybody asked me whether I wanted a job at the university? No. Now, as I said to Terry Don, I said, "What have I got to gain in this trip, Terry Don?" Because I was really upset. I was upset with Ken leaving, with me not getting on the plane. Just wasn't right. And he said, "Well, you're about to make a lot more money." And that was about the extent of a quiet conversation, but I want y'all to listen to this. So you pick your jewels of wisdom along the way, and this is what Dan Ferreter said. "Jack, I just want you to know one thing. We have a great university here. It represents a great state. The front porch of this university is the athletic program. And the awning over that porch, over that front porch, is what you're going to be in charge of." He said, "Without your success, we're not going to have as good or as many students. We're not going to have as good or as many donations. And we're not going to have have as much goodwill in that state legislature as we need to get the things we need to get done. I've developed a habit over time of really listening to smart people and understanding wisdom and keeping wisdom when you hear it. That was wisdom. Well, that was no statement of mediocrity. My meeting with Frank after the Citadel game was no discussion of mediocrity. How this has drifted in here, I don't know. But right now, Arkansas is a hell of a lot better than what I've been looking at. I know it is. A hell of a lot better. If you can go to the state of Oklahoma and get these two guys, Quinn Grovey, Jason Allen, and there's a lot of players that love to be here, great players. Got winning championships, that's what it is. And winning championships has really two dynamics: recruiting and scheduling, of which Alabama has mastered. Don't make Alabama your standard. Make Arkansas your standard. The standard is, it's not dead. They were telling me how much it cost. I was hearing this today, how many people have paid this much money to come watch those Hogs. Gosh, folks. I mean, there is a wealth of support here. This is one school in one state. Do you know how rare that is? To have everybody know when you walk down the street every day, it ain't nothing but a hog you're looking at. Nick doesn't have that. He got Auburn people trying to undermine him every day in every way they can. Now, when we left Southwest Conference, we created a heck of a problem. And Frank and I, he surprised me when he did it. Was it the right thing to do? Look at all that money that's being spent over there. Yes, it was the right thing to do. But here's what it did. It basically took Texas away from us as friendly grounds anymore to recruit. And it put us, instead of playing one Texas, the SEC has 5 Texases. Now you got two problems. Your recruiting just lost a powerful base, and you just started playing better teams. Is that enough in itself to accept mediocrity? No. No. And so, right now, I think you are looking at the result of maybe some, I don't know how this team is. I think that it suffered through all that. But I spent an hour, I guess, we were over there 45 minutes, talking with Chad. Turns out, starting with Clorinda, who held me up as a head football coach, as a secretary. But I've known about half, probably more than half the people on the staff for 20 years or more. Got a good coaching staff. You know, what this, and Harold and I were talking, and what I said, Harold, I promise you, Harold, I said this 5 times. Where you at, Harold? Starred in Arkansas. Those 2 A's, 2 stars and 3 stars in Arkansas is where you will get some great football players. Now, Randy Ross has got your job now. I've known Randy a long time. And I said it to him. But you start by having the best players this state. Don't let them get out of the state. You know, when I got the job, they said, do not let Oklahoma come over here and get another Keith Jackson, get another Mark Hudson. They were tired of Barry raiding the state for players. That's the reason I went and got Harold, because I knew he knew how to do it. I didn't know how to do it. But there is a real opportunity with Chad's leadership and Chief, nickname for your defensive coordinator, BB, Cooper. These guys know what trails to go down to get players. But they're not proven trails anymore because they've all fallen apart in the last 10 years or so, probably since Houston left. Has there been somebody that go win the, here's my one statement about what hiring has looked like from my perspective. The minute you got so much money in college athletic, college football programs, gobs of money, you started having athletic directors that sort of acted like accountants. And when they went to hire a head football coach, they were trying to win the press conference. Bielema won the press conference. I'm not going to take shots at Brett. I think he's a great football coach. It was not a good fit. What anybody ought to know is that athletic director can hire somebody that can win the living room. Win the living room. And every mama knows when somebody walks in there that fits their culture. I'm telling you the nuts and bolts here now. When I went and hired Houston Nutt, Charlie Weatherby, the whole bunch I hired, they could go get a mama to say, Coach, I want you to take my son to Arkansas. That's who I hired, right here. And we got them. We got a lot of them. This guy's going to do the same thing for you. All right? It's going to take a little while. But I say this. Unless Eastern Illinois shows up with a quarterback whose name's in a 0 or an O, you're okay. Because Eastern Illinois was in the league I was in, and we had the highest percentage winning in the league when I was there over 13 years. Except we played Eastern Illinois and they had Romo and Garoppolo. Stay away from the O's. There are 4 games there that are winnable, and I think LSU game is going to be winnable at that time under those conditions, and I think the Missouri game is winnable. And the others, to me, I don't know enough about Arkansas's team, but that will get you in a bowl game. I really think this team is going to make that comeback step to get in the bowl game. And so, put everything you got into it. Every time, Quinn and Jason know this, when they start calling the Hogs at Arkansas, there's a chill. It's better than Roll Tide and War Eagle. In that stadium for those players, or Clemson, places I've been, big arenas, big traditions. Calling the Hogs here is real goddamn special to the players that come here. And y'all are the ones that make the difference. That's why I had y'all practice. I do not want to hear mediocrity when you call a friggin' Hogs. I'm going to be watching it on television now. I'm going to turn the volume up and I'm going to see how well I coached you. Will you call them loud? Will you call them long? Yes. Will you call them when it's in doubt? Promise? All right. Now, I'm told, as far as I can go, without getting into the weeds on some things. Now, if you want to get in the weeds on something, you're going to have to ask me what weeds you want to get into. So I'm going to open this up. Are we good, Bo? All right. 2 great ones here now. Harold knows. Quinn's the best quarterback I ever coached, and I've coached some that got drafted. Jason, if Jason had tore up his knee against Baylor, we'd have won the Southwest Conference. That would have made things look different, wouldn't it? Going out the door with a ring again. Almost, Jason. Almost. All right, raise your hand if you got a question. When you quit raising your hand, and it is 37 after. All right. Anybody got a question? This will be over quick. There we go.
So what was like coaching Bo Jackson?
Oh, well, this is a good going back to what I was saying about recruiting. Bo Jackson was a linebacker. who wanted to go to Alabama, but more than anything, he wanted to be a running back. But there was no evidence he was a running back. Coach Bryant went in there and told him the truth. Coach Bryant said, Bo, you're going to play linebacker. He wasn't going to negotiate with him. In his younger years, he might have taken a double look, rethought what he did. Because he said, we're going to redshirt you, you're going to play linebacker, and no, I'm not going to give you a chance to play running back. We got more running backs than we shake a stick at. In comes Jack Crowe, I'm the offensive coordinator, and Bobby Wallace, who was recruiting him. Y'all may remember that name. And Bobby and I figured out real quick that if we told him he played running back, that was going to put us in the game. I told Bo, you play running back, I'm going to get it to you 20 times the first game. We didn't have any running backs, and I didn't care what I had to say. He was big and he was fast. We're going to figure something out. Pat came in there and did his he won the living room. Pat Dye could win a living room. And it was over. Now he shows up, and I put him at fullback. And I mean, I'll leave him there for a while. Finally, we figured out he might could run it a little bit. We put him at running back, and anyway, the rest is history. Y'all got any, you want to ask any stories about? I got a bunch of stories about Bo Jackson, but that was the beginning of it right there. Still coming back to recruiting. Recruit. I saw LaDainian Tomlinson give his acceptance speech in the Hall of Fame. I was in Waco when LaDainian was in Waco. He was a 2-star. And I called Bud Casey to come down there and look at him. I'd quit coaching at the time. I'm telling you folks, don't go crazy all that goddamn 5-star stuff in Arkansas. That's not how you build a great Arkansas football. You better have some difference makers. You better have a Quinn Grovey, Jason Allen. You better, in fact, what I've been seeing really missing has been impact players. I think the Hogs still play pretty tough. They just have to have some guys that make a difference. Bo Jackson can do that. But you can find him as accidentally as we found him. All right. Another question? Yes, sir.
Coach, it's been a while, and I followed you at a distance, but tell us more about where you came from, where were you from, where did you grow up, where did you play ball?
Okay, I grew up in the steel mills of Birmingham, Alabama. And, I mean, had a garden in the back because you didn't make enough of the steel mill to fill the table up. And I went to UAB. I didn't play college football. I went there because they had the best pre-med program. I got a pre-med degree, but then I started Jason was telling me he was coaching on the side. Well, my little coaching on the side when I was going to college ended up getting me. I was a head coach at Livingston when I was 28 years old. How you go from that to that, but how the heck do you go from that to being the head coach at Arkansas when you're 40? You know, so I live about 4 blocks from where I grew up. So, you know, but football came sort of natural for me for some reason. Quinn, Jason.
Yes, sir.
I was a high school quarterback, and I was a good high school quarterback, but I didn't play college ball. But that's the reason I'm back doing what I'm doing. This sports safety stuff, biggest tiger I've ever had a hold of, way beyond being the head coach of Arkansas in terms of its impact. But anyway, that's who I am.
Can you tell us more about that program?
What it says, and let me tell you how we got there, because I want to give some credit to Nick. As crazy as that dude is now. Crazy dude, man. I asked him to help me do this, and during January last year, during the heat of recruiting season, I would text somebody to tell him who I needed for him to call in the state legislature. And the next time I saw that legislator, I'm trying to get a bill passed, which is hard to do in any state legislature. And Nick has called every dang one I've asked to call. Now, you don't think that won't move a bill? We got a bill passed. The bill basically says, if you coach a 14 and under athlete, now we're in a football conversation, this is not just football. This is, in the most dangerous sports in youth sports, is female soccer. Do you hear me? Football's dying with bad data. Y'all want to hear this story? Bad data. We check in here at the hotel. USA Today is laying there 2 days ago. Anybody see it? Front page. CTE. Just a broad attack on what football does to the brain. Killing the game. And the only way to save it is to save it again with mamas. I know the mama approach. Mamas are afraid to let children play football. It's dying because of that fear. That fear is there because of bad information and bad coaching. Because the law says this, if you're going to coach any athlete, 14 and under, you got to take a class that Dr. Andrews, when I say Dr. Andrews, y'all know who I'm talking about, that Dr. Andrews and I created. And that's a massive challenge. Y'all know how many folks that is? There are 7 times more athletes. Take some good data out of here, folks. There are 7 times more athletes 14 and under than there are over 14 years of age. They're more vulnerable because they're aged, and they're exposed to less concept of safety by far because the coaches aren't trained. Largest group, highest vulnerability, most untrained coaches. 1, 2, 3. So we got a law. There's 460 municipalities in the state of Alabama, and every one of them are waiting for me to tell them how to do it. Is that a big job? And you know what? It's going to be in Arkansas. Because what we just did was create a standard of care. And that standard of care will cause somebody to get sued in another state if it can be used against them. You understand how that happens? So that standard of care is going to have to be reviewed by Arkansas and every other state in the union. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I've spent the last 6 years, we're in trouble in football. ESPN and I have had this conversation. Somewhere we got to start getting the right message out. Tell you where it really hits you is not when it's your children, when they get to be your grandchildren. It scares the hell out of you to think that we're gonna drop my granddaughter off with that guy. Here's a standard. What parent would drop their child off at a swimming pool without a lifeguard? That's an easy answer, isn't it? Well, we're trying to create the same standard in all the other stuff. So you're going to be hearing about Coach Sager. So anyway, boy, don't get me on those tangents. Go everywhere. Is that enough? Quarter till? Yeah, quarter till. I would. Yes, sir.
Tell the story about how you almost hired Edward.
I've told this guy since he picked me up. So many stories. He says, you got to tell that one. You got to tell that one. Folks, y'all ain't got enough time for me to tell you every story. Anyway, he picks this one out. This was between me and Chief today, wasn't it? Standing there with Chad. Chief is your defensive coordinator. That's his nickname. Y'all learned that yet? Barry Lunny, who I signed here. BB, I mean, it turns out I know all these guys. I look at Chief and I said, how's Bebe's his nickname? Ogeron's nickname. Bebe. He said, Bebe. Put a little Cajun in there. So I become the head coach. Here, and we're going to have a good defensive line. Now, there's one thing I know as an offensive coordinator, we're going to have a good defensive line. So I got to hire a great defensive line coach. I've got a guy that I've known for a while. He's defensive line coach at LSU. He's my first choice, but they're not gonna let us hire somebody away from them. So I called Jimmy Johnson. I said, Jimmy, I need 2 names that I can interview that you know firsthand can be great defensive line coaches. He says, Ogeron and Bill Johnson. Now, I interviewed Bill first, probably almost lost him because I was really thinking I was going to hire Ogeron. And Bill Johnson today is the defensive line coach for the Los Angeles Rams. He's been with the Saints. He's arguably one of the top 3 defensive line coaches in the NFL. And we had him here. He was my guy. But before I decided to take him, Ogeron I heard so many great things about it. Man, he could inspire players. He could recruit. If he went in there and if it was in Louisiana, by God, you had him, and we knew we had to go to Louisiana. So I bring him in. We do all the song and dance, showing, introduce him, all that stuff. And then I bring him in my office and I shut the door. And I said, baby, I just need for you to go over how you play a 4-eye technique. I just want to understand how you coach, and 4-eye means where you line up, and what your responsibilities are, and what your techniques are. Being lined head up to an offensive tackle. That's where it starts. Where you look, how you use your hands, what you do with your feet. So he says, Coach, just line up. Just go ahead and line up. I'm the offensive tackle. He proceeds to line up over me, and he's spitting as he's talking to me. And he starts, and once he gets really going fast, it's so Cajun, I can't even understand what the hell he's saying. Y'all seen this guy enough to quite get a little bit of a picture of this, okay? And then he gets so fired up, he starts sweating, and he takes his shirt off. And he's there from the top up, and he's naked. And anyway, I put an end to that as quickly as I can. And Broyles, and this is part of the problem, this is part of the great part of Frank and part of the bad part of Frank. And there wasn't much bad wrong with Frank, I'll be honest with you. I can say I love the guy. We had some bad days, and the last one was really bad. So whenever I have somebody and I interview him and he leaves, and Frank asked me to come down to his office when I get through interviewing him, I go down there and Frank says, I like that guy. I like that guy. I said, Coach, I can't hear that guy. He said, he's going to be a great defensive line coach. I said, yeah, he's going to be a great defensive line coach, but I can't manage that maniac. That made Frank mad, like a lot of other things I used to say. But the guy we hired was one of the top guys in the NFL, so we did all right. Is that enough of the story?